So, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Angelina Piechowska. Welcome in another episode of ISL podcast. It's my honor, and I'm very excited today to have as my guest Elliot Callender. You can correct my pronunciation if it's wrong.
No, that's beautiful. Yeah, Elliot Callender.
Okay, and who is Elliot? So, Elliot. I found the perfect description on your LinkedIn, and I think that it's something which we should use and explain who you are and what you are doing, because your work is amazing. You upgrade humans. You are ridiculously passionate about growing human potential. You do learning experience design and digital product. And we met each other, or I met you on the webinars, which was conducted by Chaos Pilot. And I download your cards, ask better questions, and then I work with the cards. And it was I think that it was the link point when you invite me to give you a feedback, and the feedback was great. And probably we will be speaking more about the cards that you create and we can use. So yeah, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, Elliot?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me in your space and for inviting me into this wonderful conversation, because I was very excited to get together again after our first conversation. So I'm excited for what emerges from our conversation today as well. So I guess the gist of who I am, very often I try to understand and introduce myself not in the sense of I am. Usually I like to explore these different perspectives and concepts around the categories and norms that we like to box ourselves into. Mm-hmm. So I guess what I'd like to explain is that I first and foremost I'm human, and that for me is something that I have been looking to evolve my perspective on and be more comfortable in who I am and my own skin and how people perceive me as well. Mm-hmm. So in all of my kind of time, I have done lots of diverse different things in life and moved around quite frequently. And so change is something that is within me and kind of happens just naturally. I approach change in perhaps a more fluid way. So where I'm kind of heading with that thought is that I have progressed from this kind of, I guess, initially being born in London, and then moving to Scotland when I was around about 5 years old. And at that time, I moved to a spiritual community in the north of Scotland, and I used to live in a caravan with my mum. And for me, that was the freest time, I think, for me in my life. It felt very organic and free. Yeah. And so that was a beautiful kind of moment in my life. And I've since then moved into society and what we call traditional society. And I went to school in a public school, and I went to a university for a year and a half before I jacked it in. And in that period of time, I realized that was a period of time where I was perhaps having to get to know the norms of what society actually looks like and how they approach life. It's very different to this spiritual community and where I was able to be Mad Elliot when I was young and running around doing anything and everything, right? And so I come to, my career. I've spent 12 years in finance, which is, again, very different to the spiritual space that I was brought up in. And that for me, I worked in wealth management and FinTech, and I was in this mode of trying to get forward in the ladder and move up the ladder and you know, explore what it meant to have a career. And so I spent 12 years in that space, and then took my time to separate myself from that world. And so at that time, I decided to go and travel the world. And it was only meant to be a 3-month traveling period of exploration, and it turned out to be 18 months. And 27 different countries later, I came back to London. And then at that time, I didn't really know what the hell I was meant to be doing. I got back and I just was quite lost in what I was looking to do. And so I found Bitcoin and blockchain, and I went to lots of meetups during that period of time. Really enjoyed the ethos of what that could do for us as humans and as a society. And started the company that I run now, Nodeunlock, with the theory that perhaps I could share this technology in a more human and creative way. So I went about doing that for individuals and then also organizations. And that got a lot of traction to start off with. And then I pivoted because I got disenchanted with blockchain and I think it showed me again the finance world from where I used to be, where I don't really want to kind of head in that direction again. And so that leads me to today. In my world, I now focus on the future of work and human development. And I feel like that is a category and label that people understand perhaps what the direction of work that I do goes in. But for me, what I'm really doing is creating frameworks and experiences that allow people to regain their autonomy and agency in life. And it's really focused around shifting people's mindsets and perhaps doing that in a way that they don't know that it's happening, which is the kind of magic. So I do experience design. I create digital products. I run and facilitate these experiences as well, workshops and events. And I share what my experiences are from that journey that I've just shared, which is a diverse journey going from, you know, spirituality to corporate life and now into this world where I'm really focused on being human and what that looks like for us. And so that's why it's exciting that we're here today to explore you know, questions and people's journeys and transitions and changes, because I've had a lot in my life as well. So yeah, thank you for creating this space again. I'm exceptionally humbled to be here.
And thank you, thank you for coming here. And I think that you already mentioned a few things that I would like to explore a little bit deeper. But before I will ask the question, I want to maybe very briefly say about what we will cover in this episode, because I would like to ask you about how to, because you said about your journey and a few points and how you came from the spiritual pathway to the financial one. So how to discover and develop our inner potential, I think it will be the core of our conversation. How to find yourself living abroad and boost your career or success, whatever it's mean for you. What to do if you feel I don't match here, because we spoke a little bit before about it.
Yes,
how to create environment, or how to design myself to feel better in the situation that I'm currently are. And I want to ask you and explore a little bit why it's so important to go out from the bubble that we are currently living, and search a little bit more. For the people who are listening, as you know, it will be the good question, how to start and how to discover my potential, because our clients or the people who are listening this podcast, they are the people who wants to flourish abroad. They came from the different countries and they try to rebuild or build the private and the business life abroad. So, you know, how to discover and how to allow myself when I discover to follow my inner potential, even if the people around me or society will say no, because I don't know, you know, you aren't good enough, or who do you think you are that you want to build something? So yeah, Elliot.
Imposter syndrome is real in many different senses and dimensions. It can be from where you're with friends and family and you feel like an imposter in that space. It can be in your environment where you're working and that's your career, and you're trying to keep yourself alive and provide for the people who are meaningful to you. You can feel like an imposter, and then you can feel like an imposter in spaces in different countries and in different worlds, perhaps. And we explored that a little bit in our first conversation, and I think it's really valuable to share with your listeners, you know, how I approach exploring perhaps the discomfort of feeling like an imposter and not belonging, but understanding who you are and how you actually bring the beauty of who you are to the space that you're in as well. And for me, it begins with really understanding yourself at a deeper level. For me, I spent a long time in life in spaces where I didn't feel like I belonged. And so as a Black kid in a very you know, I was brought up in the countryside in Scotland, so there was nothing but trees and sheep, and where I went to school, it was absolutely not diverse in that sense. You know, I was the only Black kid in school, and so I've learned throughout my life to understand that I am different, and that the environment that I might be in may be welcoming because I am different. That's one thing that I think we don't talk about enough as well in that approach of change and you know, going from one place to another. If you are different, that is something to celebrate. That's, you know, something to add to your advantage. And so when I've been exploring myself in that space, I used to try to fit in. The way that I approach or used to approach life was very much about being this chameleon. You know, how chameleons can transition themselves into any kind of shape, form, and a color, and it blends in. But at the end of the day, you're still a chameleon. You're still that reptile, right? And you can't change that. And so when you learn to accept that those are your features, those are your characters and characteristics, it becomes more freeing, I feel, when you approach life in that way, rather than having to think, how can I best fit in here? And then that becomes, I would say, a burden on who you are truly. So that's where I start. You know, who are you truly? How do you understand yourself? And I place a high amount of my time on introspection and kind of pulling out and teasing out what my thoughts are, who is living inside of me. I guess that's another perspective. When we're brought up by our family, our friends, the environment that we have lived in, you know, we are programmed in some shape or form. And so for me, I've been finding a lot of power and enjoying the process, even though it might be uncomfortable, but to start to understand who's living inside of me? Who is that talking when I react or when I have a thought or an emotion? And that allows me to begin to regain my autonomy and agency over myself, and then begin to offer myself, not other people, to that space. And I think that's where I would start.
And I think that the good point to start and explore who I am, because even on the first conversation that we had, you used the question from your card, which was how it is to be Angelina today, so how it is to be Elliot today. And I think that this question and a lot of more questions in your cards, they push you a little bit to stop, to have this pause and reflect, how it is to be me. Am I still happy, or I became who I want to be, or I should slightly change the directions? And even the simple one question, which you can ask yourself, can change your approach, can change your day, or even the future. So, and then I think what you said, that you can react like yourself, not like others. I thought that it's after the like we spoke before, that the quality of our life depends on the quality of the question that we ask ourselves. And I think that when you ask the better questions, you can respond, not react, because from my perspective, when I act somehow that I wasn't proud of myself, it was always when I react without a moment of reflection. Every time when I think about it, or when I have these few seconds to reflect how I would like to behave, it's like totally different story. So definitely agree with you, Elliot.
I think that's a beautiful thought around pausing for reflection before you react in circumstances, which I know for a fact, in my experience, is very difficult. I lead by emotion, and I'm a very, I guess, sensitive person when it comes to not sensitive in the respect of taking offense, not sensitive in respect of people doing something that I don't enjoy. It's more this sensitivity of the situation and environment that I'm in. And so when you start to build that, it's more like a muscle. It's this sense that you build over time. You can begin to understand yourself, and that allows you to have those moments of reflection before reacting. And so it's a really important perspective when we first started this conversation around how to be yourself in a space that you have just come to, and it's maybe not as welcoming. Your reactions might be to react as you would in your past world, but allowing yourself to just have that moment of reflection before you respond and react can be super powerful. And I think there's a lot of power in those moments, because you're in control of those moments rather than someone else is in control of those moments.
And I recently I discovered some powerful exercise as well, how to train it when you aren't so good, and you don't allow yourself to have this pause, which is repeat for example, if somebody asks you some question, I don't know, bring me this document, and you can say by reaction, yes, of course, I'm going. But when you repeat the same question, so do you mean that I should go and bring you the documents? It can be some kind of the reflection when you can transfer the data, but I'm not supposed to, and you can say, maybe you can go and bring the documents for yourself, or something like, the tools that you can use.
Yeah, a brilliant book and resource that I would highly recommend your
Mhm.
listeners to dive into is Never Splits the Difference by
Of
Chris
course,
Voss.
Chris Voss. Of
Yes.
course. And the question, how am I supposed to understand it? It's the some kind of the technique that I use really, really very often.
Yeah.
So yeah, highly recommend the book and the
Mm,
master class with him. And
mm,
coming back to the question and explore a little bit deeper, because for example, when you are running, you are the owner of your own company, you are
yeah.
independent, you can be who you are and you can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
But when you are the part of organization, for me it was and still is the question, how much I can be authentic and be Angelina, it's me, let's see, who I am. And on the other side, I am in some kind of the role because they hired me and I have some duties and I have to deliver something which we both agreed.
Mm.
So how to find a good balance?
So I have been exploring that in different dynamics, and the way that I take my experience and uh, guide myself predominantly, which I then share with others, um, has been from my watching my corporate career
Mm-hmm.
and how I interacted. I used to work in a 100,000 plus employee organization, so a massive organization where you are very much a number. Um, how do you bring your own energy and passion to the space in that kind of dynamic? Um, and now I'm not in there and in that space. I've had some time to reflect and kind of observe from afar what people are doing. And very often it's about this culture inside of the organization, culture inside of the team, where people try to again mimic,
Mm-hmm.
what is going on within the space. And I find that that is very often a way of coping. It's our human nature to cope with the situations that we are in, and mirroring behaviors and actions and language and how we operate in there, um, is a coping mechanism as well as a way to connect with people. uh, and when I share, I run an experience around personal branding and communication intelligence, and so I've gone into huge organizations again to take my experience of my past life, but then what I observe, and very often I see that people need to understand that they are here for a reason. You've been hired because you have skills, you have knowledge, and you have experience and a depth of experience. But what they are very often not looking for is, we have all of the diversity and inclusion initiatives, etc., and that's a huge focus currently, and it should be. So what they're not looking for is for you to become what exists within the organization. They're looking for you to be fluid and flexible in that space, and not for you to be rigid and stake your put a stake in the ground and say, this is who I am and this is the only way that we should be working. But what they are looking for is that depth of character. They're looking for you to be the human that you are. You have been hired because people enjoyed who you are, and people enjoy working with that kind of person and your talents and your energy. And so for me to be in that space, it's really important to learn um, how to offer yourself in that dynamic and show that it's okay for people to enjoy who you are. You can share your vulnerabilities. You can share. A beautiful example is right here, right now, where we're on Zoom, and I can see into your room, you can see into my room, and there's just another dynamic of understanding. And one thing that people have been saying is that can be either a positive or a negative in a lot of respects. But very often when we arrive in the office, you only see Elliot, as the person that exists in front of you, and you are putting on a facade almost. We wear uniforms, etc., because we are trying to put on a facade in a lot of ways. We dress in a certain way because we want to show ourselves in a certain light. And so I feel like there are ways that you can approach bringing your whole self to work, your whole self to a situation, your whole self to an environment, and still getting the results that you are brought in to give to the place. That's the key. So bring who you are, share with people what you enjoy, what you're passionate about, what you've been challenged with, and just kind of offer up that space for people to then enjoy being themselves as well. And you'll start to find that people begin to really flourish around you. That's how we become leaders, allowing people to become themselves in your own I guess space and time.
Yeah, it's very important what you just said, because and it's the whole story always began with us, because if I will not give myself permission to be who I am, the people around me will not be as well. And I think to have this courage, I don't know, or braveness, because it's some kind of to be vulnerable is a quite brave thing, I think, and it's not always easy. But on the other side, when you are on this pathway, you don't have other choices, because you cannot cheat yourself, and you know what I mean. You start very easily, you spot the signals that it's not the way that I want to go, or behave that I want to develop. So yeah,
I think that's an important point, especially for your listeners. So the period between you recognizing, or more so the period between the direction that you wish to go in diverging off and going in a different direction, and when you actually notice that is the really important part. Because the longer that goes, the more you kind of veer off. It's like steering a ship. You can change that 1 or 2 degrees, and because you don't notice that for a couple of miles in a massive oil tanker, as you start to go further along the ocean, you move to the left or to the right those 2 degrees, and you've made a big turn. And so for me, it's important what I try to focus on, and the reason why I like to place this much intentionality of getting to know myself is because I want to shorten that period of time between me, because we're inevitably going to make decisions and judgments that are not particularly great for us, or that are really great for us, but we don't realize. And knowing that I can shorten that period of time between that feedback loop inside of me to understand, am I going in the right direction? Am I being authentic to myself? Am I living my values and who I am? That's really important. And I think the real tool to get there is very much introspection, looking at self, questioning and asking deep questions. That's why I created the Aspect Questions toolkit, which is not just to have deep conversations with other people, but to have deep conversations with yourself, which I feel that many are not doing and approaching openly, because for various reasons, which are individual to each human. But if we can ask ourselves the deep questions and be intentional with actually getting to the root of that, it becomes very powerful and interesting in the results that you can get for yourself. It's very much, I place a high value on the self, whatever that might look like, and knowing who you are.
Yeah, it's, you know, I remind myself the person that because I'm psychologist, and before few years ago I used to work in my office, and I had one client, the lady from Central Eastern Europe, and she spoke 3 languages. She was totally amazing, intelligent, you know, beautiful lady, and she was packing in the factories. She was packing something during the night. She packed from one boxes to another boxes, and she was dying there almost each day. And the environment around her said that, and you know, whisper on the daily basis that your English isn't good enough, your education isn't good enough, and it's the best place that you can find in the UK. And she worked there for a couple of years, and then she started to work with me because of problem with depression and, you know, anxiety. And when I just realized who she is, what kind of potential she hide inside of her, that she is speaking 3 languages already, you know, and she's in this factory, and before the sessions she didn't even have an idea to change something in her life. So when she started to name the things that she wants to go through, or she really needs, or what kind of values she wants to, she believes, and then she started to behave a little bit different and respond to the people around inside the company in a different way. And when I asked her, how did you find the courage to say them, no, I'm not agree, or no, and she told me, because I had the clear pathway who I want to become, Angelina. And I know that if I will not say what I think, I will always be who I am today, and I don't want. And she prepared the list of the companies around the city that we were living, and she checked who cooperate with she spoke Spanish, let's say. It's not it's not the language that she spoke, but let's say that it was Spanish, to don't, you know, put a lot of details. However, she found a lot of companies who sell the products to Spain, and we thought about it for which company she will be real treasure. And she sent, I think, 10 CVs, and one of the company invited her for the interview. And when she went there, and it was modern building with the nice carpet, and she called me after and said, you know, I don't match that Angelina is beautiful. And I said, yeah, you match them. Of course, I see you in this company already. And I think that it was her internal insight who I want to be. I'm not happy, and depression, which was growing, you know, inside her, and unhappiness. It was one part of it. And another part of it, when you are in the hostile environment, or you are surrounded by people who have totally different philosophy of life or values, it's quite nice to find a peer group which will support you to become who you want to be, you know. And so, you know, I was totally amazed and surprised how that kind of wonderful person, you know, was suffering for so many years just because of the limitation that she had in her mind, you know?
Yeah. There is one question in the Aspects of Questions deck, which is, what limiting beliefs are you holding on to? And for me, that's a deep question when it comes to exploring, you know, what are those beliefs that are holding you back from your own potential? Because we are all human at the end of the day. And a really salient and vivid example just came to mind around the people that I'm working with currently. I'm creating a curriculum and taking a set of refugees through this curriculum to connect them with high-tech jobs in the European tech industry. So these are refugees who are software engineers, telecoms engineers, people who have exceptionally valuable skills, but because of their circumstance and where they have lived, and through no fault of their own, they have been thrown out of their own country, that it's not safe for them to be in many regards, and they can't then use those skills and get a job in spaces that they have absolutely got a level of skill and experience for. And I just see that as one of the most important things to remember is to, or at least to try and work on, is building your self-belief back up when you have been around, like you say, hostile environments that aren't open to who you are, and open to not just who you are, but what your experiences have been in the past and what has created you to be you today. It's super important to have that mechanism of building self-belief and creating possibility. And one way that I try to do that myself, because I definitely have suffered from imposter syndrome and very often suffer from it as well, is to surround myself with the type of people, not just peers, but the type of people who are going to hear you, are going to see you and support you. And not just doing that in the physical way, we also have the ability to do that digitally. So right here, right now, we have a beautiful podcast where we are sharing our thoughts and people are listening in, hopefully being inspired by what we're sharing. And it's a digital format. And so there are spaces out there where you can start to, surround yourself by positivity and build that self-belief up. And I think that is a really important way of, if you can't do it physically, do it digitally, and focus on that, because we are all connected in many different ways, not just through the internet, but through nature and through many other systems that we don't understand. And so if we can use these tools to our best ability, it can really change where we go and how we see ourselves. And I think that's a really important thing that I try to remember. If I'm feeling particularly negative, or if I'm having imposter syndrome, I try to have those tools that I can bring out to feed my self-belief and possibility.
Definitely, definitely agree. And I know that you already conduct and you already created some space when the people can meet and be members of some bigger society, and they want to grow together. So if you don't mind, below the podcast, I will place the link to your cards and to the space when we can meet. And I definitely agree. And I think that, especially when you experience some tough childhood and you didn't have influence who is around you, I think it's so important in your adult life to choose really wisely, that you don't have to suffer with people that you don't even like, you don't have to be with them. And the last time, and we are, and today this podcast and this conversation is the result that we joined some kind of the community a few weeks ago. And I remember when I went there, and it was the Chaos Pilot webinar, and I remember when I went to this part of the meeting when we spoke each other, and I spoke with some person from Brazil and the one person from Spain, and we shared some thoughts, who we are, what we are doing. And I thought suddenly, wow, I want to join them more. I want to be among that kind of people. And it's so nice to be the best version of yourself. And sometimes it's so easy to be yourself, be authentic, be who you are, make some better words, jokes, whatever. And sometimes it's a little bit harder. So I think it's some kind of it's so beneficial to be with the right people,
Yeah, I'm trying to My mission is to create spaces that allow humans to be who they are, regardless of who that is at the time. There's this notion of space to be, a space where if I am feeling positive and that is my energy, I'm there and I'm bringing that energy. And if I'm not feeling positive and I am looking for to be heard and to be supported and to share my challenges, then there's that space as well, without being without, I guess, having to justify myself, and without being looked at as if I'm uh, you know not meant to be in that space, or I'm stupid. That for me is something that is really important in everything that I do with Nodeunlock. It's about creating these environments that are inviting for people to come and share their magic, share the energy. When you bring humans together and they enjoy each other's world, so that's really important as something that is a tool for people to actually use to their ability, and explore and use more.
And in terms of the products that you created, it's some natural pathway. Like, for example, for the internal insight, who I am to, how it is to be Angelina today. It's some kind of the work that I can do with myself. And then the next step will be to expose myself, and say loudly, hello, I'm Angelina. And like to join the community, just to maybe not train, but to be who you want to be, and, to implement all the skills that you learn from this insight. It's like a natural transition.
Yeah, absolutely. I see aspects of questions and all of the tools that I create, all of the experiences are meant to be intentionally designed to be universal. And so I have this belief that very much of what we see in the world with humans who are unhappy, or they're not going in the direction that they wish to, or a lot of our societal issues come down to we don't focus on understanding ourselves enough before we then go out into the world to share ourselves with the world. And so I try to bring that perspective together by bringing frameworks and concepts and tools that allow people to understand themselves, while having an environment as well that is a collective environment, a collective space that nourishes people and allows them to flourish. I think there's a lot of power and a lot of magic that happens by doing that. And so very much, the things that I create are universally applicable. They are there for people to use in many different chapters of their life, regardless of where they're at as well, to keep coming back and using them going forward.
And I have some question about the future skills or future platforms, because I join a lot of meetings on the Zoom, Teams, and the meeting that we spoke about before, it was the platform when it was only the audio sound, so we couldn't see ourselves. And it was nice because it was some kind of the intimacy. So I couldn't see, we can upload our photo, but and it was very intuitive, because when somebody was on my right side, I heard from the right side, or left, and I think that we build a rapport, or the build a bridge of trust much quicker, just because we didn't see each other.
Yep.
Do you think that it makes some sense to
Massively.
Yeah.
So one thing that I have this philosophy of, it's not Zoom that's the problem, it's the people that are running the Zooms. And for me, very often I feel like we have lots of different tools out there that allow us to communicate and collaborate. Zoom is one of them, and you can still create that kind of experience just by switching your camera off and having segments of a meeting or an event where you actually intentionally switch your camera off.
Yeah.
But the real magic in like what you're speaking about is using these other platforms that are just audio only, you know, and that can allow you to, when you shut off a sense, you know, it's a bit like meditation, when you're just sitting there and you are eyes closed and you are just observing what's going on in your body. It allows you to just focus on that rather than all of the other elements and inputs that are coming into your mind. And I see that as being a very powerful way to design your interactions and meetings as well. So very often I design these experiences just like we experienced in Chaos Pilots, where I focus on taking people through just audio only experiences so that they can hear each other and just focus on people's voices, the texture and the sounds and what is coming through their ears. And I think that's a beautiful way of connecting. And then you can layer on top of that, if you did want to have, you know, interactions that are visual, you use Zoom or any of the other video conferencing apps. And that allows you to create the kind of intimacy. And I feel that people are very much lacking digital intimacy. And that's something I'm very much exploring by using these different platforms to create interactions that are very much more meaningful and intentional.
And you know, it's a really fantastic space and brilliant approach, especially for the people who are living abroad and they lost the connections that they used to have, or you know, even in terms of ISL clubs, the International School of Life clubs that we are running each Thursday, and the beauty of multicultural environment that we created, or the people who join, when we have people from, you know, from China, from Portugal, from Hungary, and it's, if you cannot, you know, if you cannot leave your bubble in the reality, you can do it online, and then you can easily check that, yeah, that people can think differently, they have different beliefs, they have different, you know, motivations. And I think to create that kind of space, like you mentioned, to be yourself fully, it's extraordinary, and it's something that we are really craving for, especially during the COVID.
That's what I'm focusing on. I see that as exceptionally important need and challenge to help solve. And so just for your listeners, you know, there are two platforms I would recommend exploring. One is High Fidelity, which is the spatial audio experience and platform that we used in Chaos Pilots, and you're mentioning you can hear people from near or far, depending on how close or how far away you are, just very similar to in person, from left to right. And that gives you this whole different dynamic of understanding who is speaking to you, and you know, it's a really beautiful experience. And another one is not audio only, but the way that they have designed it is really beautiful. It's called Icebreaker, and this platform is really great for carrying out and creating these experiences that connect people one-to-one, having these video conversations, but they're led by prompts. And so I actually use this from my Ask Better Questions experience.
Oh, wow.
Which it takes the questions in the tool, and you basically have a space where you can chat in this space, and it's you can see the host, which would be me in this case, and I can speak to them, and people can then reply in the chat, and that's in their main room. And then you can go off into connecting them to have one-to-one video conversations, and they can flip the card and see that question, and the question acts as the kind of permission slip for them to ask that deeper question. So it ends up being this beautiful conversation that people don't usually have, because there are intentionally deep questions being prompted and used, and also the platform is very much about choice. So you opt in to a conversation, you opt in to flipping the cards, you opt in to having a chat. And so it's very different to Zoom, where, you know, the host is doing things for you, or, you know, it's not as opt in. So those are two platforms I would very much recommend if people would like to move away from just using Zoom. High Fidelity and Icebreaker are beautiful platforms that can be great for meetings, get-togethers, hangouts, and events. Yeah.
So when we have the chance to join one of your events.
So I'm going to run the Ask Better Questions experience, I think, on a monthly basis from January. So you can go to my website, nodeunlock.io, and look at the experiences tab, and you'll be able to see when the experiences are happening. But I would love to run them on a monthly basis so that people can start to come to them, explore different questions and conversation styles. And I see it as this kind of space where people can keep coming to you know, refine and explore how to ask better questions as well, and explore how to have more serendipitous interactions and conversations. So yeah, that's where you can find it on my website.
And I think that underneath, in terms of your meetings or in terms of ISL meetings, we call so it's quite logical what kind of things you will like. You will be connected, you will meet another people, you can grow together. It's quite obvious things that will happen, but underneath we have few things that we don't expect, and they will happen, and probably they will happen after all. After a few weeks, it's like a plant the seed. And from my perspective, a lot of, for example, people told me, especially foreigners, that they improve or they exercise the English skills, or they can develop the elevator pitch, because every time we have to say, yeah, I'm Angelina, I'm psycho, or you know, whatever. So you start to be more confident in terms who you are and what you know provide. Or it's quite and I think that we really need that kind of the spaces, and I will be on the next one for sure in January. So count me in, Elliot.
Thank you.
Thank you for the conversation.
Yeah, it's been beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe one day it will be, you know, even when you start to spend time with the people that you choose, or the people who really attract you somehow because of the personality or the philosophy or the communication style. It's so hard sometimes to come back to the world when it's a little bit different. And you know what I mean? You want to be in this space when the people will not judge you, but understand you, and they will listen. It's quite... So, Elliot, thank you so much.
Thank you
For the conversation. Hopefully the first, but not the last one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I will place all the links that you mentioned below, so the listeners can very easily find you, and probably see you in January.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Angelina. It's been really beautiful to have another conversation with you, which is always refreshing and nourishing. So I appreciate you as a person.
Thank you, Elliot.
Thanks.